Kevin. Welcome back to our decking series.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, it's great to be back.
Yeah, no, glad to do another segment here. This one, I thought we could talk about what's turned out to be many fastening options for manufactured decking these days. It's pretty crazy, you know, when it first came out. I think people were hand driving nails into that original product, you know, just a galvanized, hot dip galvanized casing nail. I don't know if they're drilling it or whatever. We had some spiral spikes, things like that. And screws came on shortly after, maybe the early adopters, some of the better ones did some screws. But I thought today we could start off talking about fastening options for the grooved manufactured decking board.
So yeah, what our company developed was this Trex Hideaway Clip. Now this goes in at the side and the groove, it fits it right in there. Now the big advantage to this clip here would be your installation time and also cost. So it's not stainless steel, it's actually a glass-filled nylon.
But the screw is stainless steel.
But the screw is stainless steel, which is the best thing to use in treated products today, especially in our environment.
Okay.
So the big advantage to this screw is that it would go straight down and then it would hold that and gap the board in there. Now, when doing that, the advantage would be if you need to replace this board, you'd unscrew that, loosen it up, slide these clips out, and then pull that board out, put the new one in, and then slide them in. You don't have to go to that first board anymore.
Oh boy.
So your installation time is cut down quite a bit as well.
Yeah, no, that was a game changer. I know a lot of other brands, leading brands of deck boards, contractors use your hidden fastener to install all kinds of products.
Yeah.
Even though I know it's designed specifically for Trex, but it works for a lot of other things.
That it does, yeah.
Good stuff. The other thing I noticed in the installation guide, they talked about a connector clip product, and I wasn't super familiar with that. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, no, the connector clip is what we'd call a starter clip. So it's got this, it's only meant to fit the groove on one side, so you would actually drill this in on the side of the house, and then the board would slip in that way. So really it would start that. Now what most common is done out there on that picture frame board, so this would be considered like a picture frame board. You could use a square product and just face screw that.
So a square edge product.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, you know, Trex does also have, you know, if you want a complete hideaway fastener, we do have a router bit that can create that groove on a square board too.
Okay. There's another method out there that tends to fall off my radar, but you can actually have a hidden fastener situation with a face fastener. So the screw and plug method, I believe. Right? I think you've got a sample of it here for us that it's beautiful. I know you've got some normal screws on this side, but maybe you can talk about what's going on here where I really can't even see anything, but that is actually fastened.
Well, first off, they take a plug cutter and they'll actually take out a plug of our material. So we would take out a plug of this, and then this here would countersink a hole to fit that plug, and then you'd screw it in with this screw and drive it to where it stops because it's countersink to the correct depth, and then you'd take this plug and put it in there.
Yeah, well, that is pretty slick to say the least. And it seems like that's a popular way to go, maybe on your perimeter boards around your deck, with your picture frame in your deck, and or maybe around stairs.
Yeah.
You know, you want a hidden fastener, but maybe you want it to really be snugged up and secure.
Yeah, and even I'd add benches to that.
Okay.
And planter boxes and such.
Great stuff. Okay. Well, Kev, we've talked about hidden fastener systems for groove boards. We talked about a way to do a hidden fastener with a screw and plugs system. At the end of the day, you go a little bit old school and just fasten it down with a screw. I know a lot of times we'll recommend a stainless steel screw shank if somebody can go that route, because you know, let's face it, these are really long-lasting products, so you want a long-lasting fastening solution. But maybe you could just talk about some of the screws that are out there today. It seems like these are a pretty darn close color match in this display you have.
Yeah, the screws have really come a long ways. So the first thing I think I'd recommend is actually referring to your installation book from your manufacturer, because they actually have recommended screws. And you know, they get tested, and I know with our company we test all the screws, and if you go outside of the recommended fasteners, you know, it could create a aesthetic like a dimple, or it could not seat as correctly. So definitely refer to the installation book.
That's a great point, Kev. I imagine all the leading manufacturers probably done something similar.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it would probably still hold your board down, but it might not look as nice, and or could create some challenges that you just don't want to deal with if you don't have to.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin, I know another thing that we've seen out there that we want to warn against is people actually overdriving their screws and, setting them too deep in the deck board itself. Are there different tools out there now that actually help you do that so you're not just kind of eyeballing it or drilling and hoping?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have some options?
No, there are. There's a great couple products here. This is called a Smart Bit. So we have one that's countersinks the hole. What it would do is pre-drill the hole, and then it countersinks to the proper depth to fit that screw, so you can hit it more flush. Yeah, and what will happen is if people are using the impact wrench, the impact driver will actually overdrive that, and you're right. The big key is to getting that flush, because if you do overdrive it a bit, you'll have a bit of a shadow, and it'll be more noticeable.
Okay, that's a good tip. Well, it's nice. I imagine if you're using something like this out there these days, you'll have a much more consistent deck surface too. That's pretty nice. Well, Kev, one of the big reasons I wanted to create this series with you was to show what we're going to talk about next. And that's actually proper fastening methods for a cap composite product, which, as we talked about in the evolution of the product category anymore, that's sort of where everybody's landed, at least the leading manufacturers. And unlike PVC, where you can actually encourage you to get closer to the edge and hold it down and stabilize it like we talked about, the cap composites, they want you to stay an inch back from the end. So basically in this mock-up here, we've just got a 2x8 treated deck joist. We'd put a saw kerf in to mimic our butt joint, which we know there's ways to avoid that, but we're showing that. And then out of the installation guide, we look in there, it says you need to be an inch back from the end of the board, and you need to install that screw perpendicular to the board, meaning straight down. So you can see here, if you do the proper method, you can't even hit the board on a single joist. So what people do, right? Well, you've seen it, I've seen it. Say, oh, well, I'm just gonna put it in an angle. I'll fasten that board down. And that may work, it may not. And when it doesn't, that's where it gets to be really concerning for you and I. Freeze thaw cycles, different things, that board can start cracking from the bottom up, and we've seen all kinds of things to where it might even just chunk off.
Yeah.
And so,
well, and this is a great display you put together, because from my experience, the majority of job sites that I do go to, they do try to share a joist here. So what you got, and you're absolutely right, if you're inch off the end, and then you got to be inch off the side and go straight down. Now, the big key to that, too, is if you don't go straight down, you're going to create a big dimple, and the screw's going to be at an angle, and it's going to be very noticeable, and it doesn't look good.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But this is why you need to add additional joist here, or even just initial nailer, too. You can do a 2x4 and nail that thing in there.
Yeah.
But there's no way that you can hit one joist when you're going straight down like that. And you're right on this angled one. If you do try to go angle, one, it won't look good on the surface. Two, there's not enough holding power here because you're not even a half inch from the edge, and it will eventually crack on you.
Yeah, in a perfect world, if everything was 100% stable, which we know it's not, that'd be great. But like I say, you get all kinds of, the wood moves at its own rate, the deck boards move at its own rate. You're sort of asking for trouble. Well, and the other thing too, on the safety side, is just a trip hazard. A lot of times when you see something like this, it doesn't fasten as well. So those butt joints, one board will get a little higher than another at times, and it's just fraught with challenges.
No, and this is the number one issue I see out there. So this is something that we need to spend time covering, because you definitely cannot share that joist. It just creates problems down the road, and that's why we encourage that picture framing and kind of really staying away from those end-to-end butts, because if you don't install them properly and take your time on that installation, it just creates issues down the road.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad we created this segment on fastening. Lots of options. Definitely want to do it right, no matter what your choice is. So, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thank you.